West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Good morning, everybody. Are we online and do we see everybody? I see nobody except people in person here.
Well, we see you.
Good. Good morning, everybody. We have had a major distraction, which you may have seen when you first logged in today. And Scott and I had to fight our way up to the front here without being able to see what was going on, except for the hockey game, which, of course, is all important for most people. Anyway, nice that you guys at home can watch the game. You'll have let us know what the score is, unless Aiden's checking back there and will let us know. My name's Florence, and I am in person today. I'm usually online, and I wanted to welcome everybody. A few people still filtering in person here. So I want to say welcome. Happy winter once again here in Toronto. And it was another day for snow boots and cleaning off the car before we got here, but I think the snow might have stopped temporarily, so I'm quite sure spring is on its way. Okay, land acknowledgement. West Hill is located in Treaty 20 in the area of the Williams Treaties of 1923. These are the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and were previously occupied by the Seneca and Huron-Wendat First Nations. There are over 600 First Nations in Canada, which represent more than 50 distinct Indigenous languages across our country. Many of us are continuing to learn about the enormous contributions Indigenous people have made to our lives, and the value and wisdom in the First Nations teachings of the Seven Grandfathers. Children are taught to practice living their lives with wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth. Values that enable people to live in a way that promotes harmony and balance with everyone and everything in creation. We invite you to visit the website of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, which provides a rich history of their people and their present-day activities. At the end of our readings, we customarily add the phrase, offered as wisdom for the journey, and we invite you to respond with the phrase, may we walk in its light. This is simply an invitation to participate if you wish to do so. The reading this week is from Erich Fromm, The Art of Loving. The first step to take is to become aware that love is an art, just as living is an art. If we want to learn how to love, we must proceed in the same way. We have to proceed if we want to learn any other art, say music, painting, carpentry, or the art of medicine or engineering. What are the necessary steps in learning any art? The process of learning an art can be divided conveniently into two parts. One, the mastery of the theory. The other, the mastery of the practice. If I want to learn the art of medicine, I must first know the facts about the human body and about various diseases. When I have all this theoretical knowledge, I am by no means competent in the art of medicine. I shall become a master in this art only after a great deal of practice, until eventually the results of my theoretical knowledge and the results of my practice are blended into one. My intuition, the essence of the mastery of any art. But aside from learning the theory and practice, there is a third factor necessary to becoming a master in any art. The mastery of the art must be a matter of ultimate concern. There must be nothing else in the world more important than the art. This holds true for music, for medicine, for carpentry, and for love. And maybe here lies the answer to the question of why people in our culture try so rarely to learn this art, in spite of their obvious failures, in spite of the deep-seated craving for love. Almost everything else is considered to be more important than love. Success, prestige, money, power. Almost all our energy is used for the learning of how to achieve these aims, and almost none to learn the art of loving. Offered as wisdom for the journey.
May we walk in its light.
This morning, I have a thesis that I want to start with. I've written it down here. I don't know if you can see it, so I'm going to hold it up. I see everybody on Zoom getting closer. So if you can see it, great. If not, I will still read it. Here's what it says. If we can learn how to best love, as we are talking about the question of how this week, if we can learn how to best love, then we can learn how to change our world for the better. So that's my thesis this morning. If we can learn how to best love, then we can learn how to change our world for the better. And I have the word how underlined. I'm going to underline the word we as well, because it's up to us. Us people, we are the best answer. We'll come back to this thesis, if I remember that is. So this goal to love and be loved, it's a great goal. Now, for me in my life, the way that I kind of phrase it, a mantra that I use in my life is to love the best that I can. This has been something that I have meditated on this saying for years, to love the best that I can. And sometimes it has brought me great joy to meditate and actually act upon it, of course. It's brought me great joy to do so. It's made me feel like I have an alignment with my life, with who I am, with some of my deepest values, that I feel congruent. However, as you can probably relate to, that hasn't always been the case. There have been dark nights of the soul. There have been times when I felt like I'm just wandering around in the desert, not knowing what direction, where to go. And I say nights, sometimes weeks and months, seasons. And I have felt, okay, I have such a good intention. I want to love. Why doesn't everything just work out? Why isn't there a magic wand that's waved and just because you have this good intention that the universe is automatically in your favor? But that doesn't seem to be how it always works. And so I started, digging deeper, and I thought, okay, this desire I have to love the best I can, or similarly, how West Hill, to be guided by love. I thought, is this the right thing? I've looked at different philosophies, different ways of living, and I've come back time after time. And I've considered, okay, well, maybe it's in somewhat of my approach. And it's not that I'm expecting that everything is just always rainbows and butterflies, but I've thought there must be something a little bit more. And I've looked at, okay, what does it mean to love? Love is just not some abstract idea, but I've thought about the different components in which we talked about a few weeks ago. I've thought, okay, well, love needs wisdom and truth. And then it needs to be applied towards relationships, just right relationships, justice. And I've thought, okay, it also has to have things such as courage. It has to be done in moments when it's hard. Discipline, commitment, just as the hockey players. And I've thought about these different ingredients. And still, I could have lots of dark nights of the soul, lots of wonderings. Am I going in the right direction? I mean, this seems good, but this seems like it could be good, or maybe this idea or this idea. What do I do? Well, I started considering this part of the mantra, this personal mantra that I have, the best that I can. And sometimes I would just want to act with brute effort, just muscle my way through. Love the best you can, just keep going. And as I started considering it more and I took that value of wisdom, I said, what if instead of working harder, you worked smarter? And I thought, this is the main goal in my life. It is the cornerstone goal, to love the best I can, and everything else kind of flows from that. What if I took some of the best research and science of goal setting and I applied it to this main goal? I mean, I could do it towards things such as, things with athletics or other areas of my life. But what if I applied it to this main area? And maybe if I applied it, it would help me understand the how just a little bit better. And so this research we've used throughout this series, it's from goal setting theory. It's a theory that's from the 1980s. It's a long-standing theory, and it has been tried and true, and it's highly respected. I remember the first time I heard this theory, I thought to myself, that resonates. There's something about this. And I'm not saying that this is the only way that we can slice and dice the question of how, but I do think that the ingredients that we will talk about in this theory this morning, I do think that these are some main ingredients that we need to have when we look at the question of how. I want to say that part again. I think the ingredients in this theory, they're main ingredients for looking at this question of how. So the first ingredient is clarity. This is what these 7 questions are all about. I started using these 7 questions in my life so that I could gain a greater sense of clarity. And so I have here on the next slide how some of these questions line up. So all these questions go back to this question of how. How do we live a more loving life? There are different interpretations and give different context. So for example, why? The question of why, it helps us understand the meaning. As they say, meaning fuels motivation. And so if I can understand the why I need to do something, why I need to, get up every morning and give myself to some of the same goals over and over again. If I understand the why, I'm much more likely to want to do it. And then the question of which gives us the characteristics of love, such as which ingredients, justice or courage or gratitude or wisdom, which helps us understand which ingredients we need to use. And then this question of who can we love? And it helps us gain clarity on ourselves as well as others. A few weeks ago, I gave a talk based on who, and it was looking at some of the inner depths of ourself, such as our physical self, our emotional self, our relational self, our mental self, and I could keep on going with different parts of ourself. But it's to help us gain clarity so that we can better understand this ultimate question of how. When we learn how to love our physical self or our mental self, for example, we have a better understanding of how to best love ourselves, as well as knowing what others might need. And then these questions, when and where, they give more context. When can I best love? If I'm trying to understand my how, it might be I need to start off early in the morning, or maybe I need to sleep in, or maybe it's a certain part of the year or a certain part of my life that I need to have an understanding of. And the question of where, when I'm looking at this question of how, the where can help. For example, where am I most productive? Or where is it that it is good for me, that it's good for, and I use this term, in more of a secular way, but where is it good for my soul? Where am I fed? as well as where can I help feed others? It goes both ways. The series isn't just called love. It's love and be loved. It's both parts of it. So the next question I have here is, what helps us notice what we get to love? As I've said many times before, sometimes it's as simple as a cup of coffee, a warm drink, or that we have a roof over our head. And so when we're looking at how we can love, a lot of times it's just practicing gratitude. It's maybe not some amazing big strategic plan. Sometimes it's a simple noticing the everyday good that is around us. So all these questions go to bring clarity. So the first step, once again, is to have clarity. I find it interesting when you look at different philosophies and world religions, this question or this thought of clarity is often at the forefront. So, for example, I've shared before in the Jewish tradition, the main prayer in the Jewish tradition is called the Shema. And the Shema means to hear, to be aware, to listen, to understand what's going on within you, as well as your household, your neighborhood, your community, and our larger world. Because when you listen, then you can act. I also think of other traditions, such as a modern day, what's called care ethics. And the first step is to be attentive. And once you're attentive, then you can respond. Once again, other traditions, I'll give two more because I think that this is important. And this is why we're doing this series. In Buddhism, the first step on the noble eightfold path, the first step is right view. Well, how do you gain a right view? By being aware, by having good vision, by seeing the world in the right way. And then one more example. In the Greek tradition, the ancient Greek tradition, it says one of the main axioms is to know thyself. If you lived in ancient Greece, you would have known the axiom. It's a core part, to know thyself, to be aware, to have clarity in your life. And what I find interesting, there was some within that tradition who would practice a lot of walking, which is something I actually have a practice of. And I use the walking to gain awareness because when I go for a walk, I aim to reflect on my day as well as set new intentions. But there are some in this ancient Greece tradition who would walk barefoot. Now, I'm not saying that's something that we should do. But why would they walk barefoot? One of the reasons is to remind themselves to be aware of the terrain that they're going through, to feel the unevenness of it, to look out for sharp objects, nails that have been maybe left, to be aware, to be in touch with reality, which includes ourself, but then goes on to the world around us. So the first part, once again, of this question of how, to gain clarity. And that's why we're going through this series once again. And that's why when we go through this process of Vision Works here soon, we will be aiming to gain clarity as a community. Now, the second thing that I think is a main ingredient for how, and I love this ingredient, be challenged. I mean, can you imagine if I came before you and I said, I have a big goal for the next year. Our big goal for the next year at West Hill is we are going to play and sing one song together. That's our big goal. Y'all would say, really? That's it? Well, one song? And maybe we get like a quick, okay, we reached our goal, but we actually, it wouldn't bring us much satisfaction because we would say that's too easy. And it's not that we have unhealthy challenges. Now, if I said, hey, by this next week, I want us to all be best friends and I want us to have 1 million people in our community. Well, that's an unhealthy goal. It goes back to gaining clarity first. When we know our values, that's why we go over our values every week. When we know our values and how we want to show up in this world, we can challenge ourselves by meeting those values, and I would also include meeting those needs. When we are clear on what we need, which is why a couple weeks ago we talked about our physical needs, our emotional needs, our mental needs, and then as well as the needs of others, when we're clear in that, we can challenge ourselves to meet those needs. And there's something exciting about a healthy challenge. I'm going to ask all of you, think back to a time when you felt challenged, whether it's something that you brought upon yourself or whatever it might be, and then you completed that challenge. You feel like you succeeded in that challenge, and you had a good feeling. I think back to one time when I remodeled one of my first houses. And I thought to myself, as soon as we bought the house, what have I done? Why did I buy this house? I said, Joe, I think that you can do this. And I kept on showing up day after day, sometimes 15-hour days. I mean, long days. And it got done. And I can look back. I mean, sometimes I still look back at the pictures I have of that home. And I think, wow, you did something good. It was a healthy challenge. And that challenge, it helps bring motivation to our how when we have healthy, good challenges. So the researchers and this theory that I've talked about, they have in an article, they wrote this here. It'll be on the screen. I hope that you can see it. If not, I will read it as well. They wrote in this article regarding some of the studies that they had done in this goal-setting theory. They said these studies showed that specific, remember that clarity part, that specific high or hard goals lead to a higher level of task performance than do easy goals or vague, abstract goals, such as the exhortation to do one's best. So long as a person is committed to the goal, has a requisite ability to attain it, and does not have conflicting goals, there is a positive linear relationship between goal difficulty and task performance. They go on to say later in the article, high or hard goals, they're motivating. They're motivating because they require one to attain more in order to be satisfied than do low or easy goals. We talk about love a lot at West Hill. But each week we have to dig deeper into what that is. We have to take it from abstract goals to challenging goals. A few weeks ago, I shared from a speech that Martin Luther King said, and talking about love, he says, I'm not talking about emotional bosh. I'm talking about a strong, demanding love. And I would add to that, a love that challenges. A love that takes us out of our comfort zone, because at the edge of our comfort zone is growth. If we want to stay comfortable, we can. But if we want to grow in ourselves and as a community, in quality and quantity, we have to be willing to get uncomfortable. But the interesting thing is, when we get uncomfortable, I find it actually comforting. When we go to stretch ourselves, I mean, think about times when you've been in great growth in your life. It might have been hard, but I think you would say it's been worth it. And there's something comforting about that. At West Hill, we're going to have some challenges ahead. As I've mentioned with VisionWorks, I'm excited to go through this process because we need to set challenging goals that motivate us, that help push us up mountains, that give the wind behind our back. We need that challenge. The next main ingredients I want to talk about in this question of how we can best love and be loved. The next ingredient is commitment. This ingredient is so important. You can get clear. Many people do through New Year's resolutions. They get clear. They write down goals. They might even be challenging. And then about 8 days in, Unfortunately, and I laugh a little, I'm right there in that same boat sometimes. The goal's over. Now, I do think that the first steps are important and they help us stay committed, but we have to make a decision. And I get it can be difficult. For example, I think sometimes if I have a goal to, get up earlier in the morning or to go for a walk or run in the morning, I'm faced with the comfort of my own bed or the discomfort of getting up, the quick discomfort, because then quickly, it's not that discomfort, it's actually comforting. But each and every day, I have to recommit. It's not a one-time thing that I just make a commitment, I write it down, I put it in my journal, and it stays on the shelf and it collects dust. Every day, I have to recommit. That's why I've tried doing some stuff around having a journaling group, and I get it's not for everybody. It's because I want people to be intentional. I want people to have clarity and challenge themselves and what their goals, what their intentions are for their life, how they can live a loving life. But I also want to provide a tool where people can commit every day, every week, and stay consistent in that, to have something that's a reminder, a habit. As I shared the quote earlier, that excellence, it's not a one-time act. It's not just putting on the hockey pads for the first time and expecting to be a great hockey player. It's a habit. It's showing up at practice day after day, even in times when you don't feel like it. And of course, that's easier said than done. And then, of course, this next part, consistency, to check in with ourselves. And as I said, to recommit every day. I want to read the quote that we started with here. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the second part of it. The first part of it talked about how we have we learn the theory, and this is from a book, The Art of Loving. And so the author, Eric Fromm, a humanist psychologist, he says we have a theory. We learn the art of loving. And then from there, we have to put it into practice. But then he brings up a third part, and this is what we're going to read. But aside from learning the theory and the practice, there is a third factor necessary to becoming a master in any art. The mastery of the art must be a matter of ultimate concern. There must be nothing else in the world more important than the art. This holds true for music, for medicine, for carpentry, and for love. Once again, I'm going to highlight that part. The mastery of the art must be a matter of ultimate concern. There must be nothing else in this world more important than the art. And then Eric Fromm goes on to say, and maybe here lies the answer to the question of why people in our culture try so rarely to learn this art. In spite of their obvious failures, in spite of the deep-seated craving for love, almost everything else is considered to be more important than love. Success, prestige, money, power. And as I read those things, don't get me wrong, I mean, we all know loving people, but you can think about some of the larger meta-narrative that we are living in. Success, prestige, money, power. People care about learning those things. And the author goes on to say, almost all of our energy is used for the learning of how to achieve these aims, and almost none to learn the art of loving. If I could kind of sum up one of my big goals in life, a big part of my how is to learn the how of the art of loving the best that I can and helping others do the same. And this is what's incredible about West Hill, is that we have an opportunity. We have this main value to be guided by love, but we also realize that we're grounded in life and that we need each other and that we can come together and we can grow in wisdom, grow in our ability to learn what is good and true and what is loving for ourselves and for others, but to do so together. Now, this isn't a part of the original theory, but I felt I would add a little bit something to it. I have one more thing for our how. We have clarity, we have challenge, we have commitment, we have consistency. We want to better understand our how. But as it's been said before, no person is an island. I mean, really, even on a physical level, we can't live this life alone. It's not good for us. And that's why we come together to better learn how we can best love, to gain clarity as we're doing through these different questions in this series, and we'll continue to do, to be challenged together, to get to know what's going on in each other's lives, and to encourage each other, to put the courage within so that we can rise up to the challenges that we face as a community and as individuals. And then to be committed together, to make that main commitment, to be guided by love and to stay consistent and to do so as a community. This morning, I didn't get into all the details of specifics of how we can best love, or the how we can best love, because I don't know for each and every person. But I wanted to provide some framework of some main ingredients that we can use in each of our lives, as well as a community, of how we can best put love into practice, into action in all that we do. So speaking of being a community, we usually have a time of reflection, because it's one thing to just hear something and go in one ear and out the other. But we want to try to reflect on it so that we can take it in a little bit deeper and to better understand it. And sometimes we'll do so with a reading or just sitting in silence. And sometimes we'll do so as we connect in groups, because conversation is helpful. And we are community. This is what we come here for.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.